Hello, today I'll be talking about my top 10 metal albums of 1990. I've also done a top 10 metal albums video for 1993 and 1989, so if you haven't seen those videos, make sure to check those out after this video right here. But let's go ahead and dive into this, starting off with one of the big four, with Anthrax, with Persistence of Time. Something you notice with this album is that it's a bit darker, especially compared to their previous album, State of Euphoria, and this album to me is definitely one of the band's best. You also have some of the band's best work on here, like Keep It in the Family, which is maybe a top 10, maybe top 15 Anthrax song for me. Also have In My World, which when it comes to the singles, I think that's one of their more underrated singles, not talked about as much as some of their other singles like Madhouse or Indians, but In My World, definitely a really great song. You also have the cover of Got the Time, which is one of the more well-known songs on the album. An overall solid cover. I have heard the original, but it's definitely been a while. I'd have to hear it again in order to really remember much about it. But either way, I do like Anthrax's cover of Got the Time. The opening track, Time, for me is one of the band's best album openers. Belly of the Beast is another highlight for me on the album. But yeah, this would be their final album with Joey Belladonna until he would return back in 2011 with their album Worship Music. But yeah, Persistence of Time, definitely a thrash metal classic. And again, one of Anthrax's best. Let's go ahead and move on to some old school death metal with Spiritual Healing by Death. Not one of my personal favorites from the band, but still an album that I do enjoy. To me, Death has released no bad albums. They really do not really have any stinkers in their discography, in my opinion. While, again, this is maybe not one of my personal favorites, I still do enjoy this album. I think there are some really strong songs on the album, like the opening track, Living Monstrosity, definitely one of the big highlights on the album. Altering the Future is also really good. I do like the more slower tempos that you get in that song. Of course, you do have your more faster moments in the song too, but either way, all around, definitely another really great song on the album. The title track's another highlight off the album for me, definitely another standout. Killing Spree, in my opinion, is one of the band's best album closers. Kind of an underrated song on the album, not talked about as much as some of the other songs on the album, but again, Killing Spree, definitely one of my personal favorites on the album. And again, when it comes to Death's closing tracks, I think this is maybe one of the best ones. Within the Mind is also pretty good, but yeah, like with any album, there are some songs on here that I think are stronger than some others, but still, with all that said, not a single bad song on here. But yeah, Spiritual Healing, definitely another solid Death album. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on back to thrash metal with Death Angel with Act 3, which is definitely my favorite Death Angel album. Frolic Through the Park would definitely be in close second. I really dig that album a lot, but Act 3, again, has to be at the top for me. Maybe not as thrashy as their debut, The Ultraviolence, but still, even with that said, I still think this is, again, probably the band's best, or to me, at least their peak, but of course they do have some other really great work too. But Seemingly Endless Time is definitely one of the band's best album openers, and also probably a top 5 Death Angel song for me. Absolutely love that song. You do have the ballad A Room with a View, which I'm sure not every fan is into, but I personally do dig that song. The Organization, I think, is one of the band's best deep cuts. I definitely really enjoy that song. Definitely a highlight on the album for me. Stagnant's also pretty good. I do like Stop. Definitely one of my favorites when it comes to the first half of the album. But yeah, I will admit, I do think that the first half is definitely the stronger half. But the second half, again, does have its moments, though. I do like Disturbing the Peace and Stagnant. But yeah, all around, definitely a really great album from Death Angel. And again, definitely my favorite from them. And now we're moving to Judas Priest with one of their iconic albums, Painkiller. Definitely one of the fan favorites in the discography, and for good reason. Screaming for Vengeance is at the top for me, but this album would be like second or third for me. All around, a really great album, and definitely a big step up from the previous album, Ram It Down, which I do like Ram It Down, but I think this album definitely blows that album out of the water. I mean, you have the title track, which is definitely one of Definitely an iconic song for them, and for good reason. Definitely one of their best songs too. You have other really great songs on here too, like Hell Patrol, and you definitely get some pretty killer guitar work on the album too, such as in songs like All Guns Blazing and Metal Meltdown. And of course, the metal god himself, Rob Halford, vocally is just off the charts on this album, especially with certain performances, like in songs like, of course, the title track Painkiller and Metal Meltdown, All Guns Blazing. I mean, oh, and also A Touch of Evil too. A Touch of Evil is maybe not as heavy as some of the other songs on the album, but it's actually one of my personal favorites on the album, and honestly maybe one of my favorite Judas Priest songs. One of the more different sounding songs on the album, but I personally really love A Touch of Evil. Absolutely love that song. Nightcrawler is another banger off the album, but all around, another really great Judas Priest album. And for me, and I'm sure many fans would agree with me on this, definitely one of the band's best. And now let's go ahead and move on to one of the German Big Four with Creator, Coma of Souls. At this point, probably one of my favorite thrash metal albums of all time. I mean, if you love thrash and you haven't heard this album, definitely give it a listen, definitely check it out. Absolutely love this album. Definitely my favorite Creator album too. I mean, of course I do enjoy Pleasure to Kill and Extreme Aggression, Terrible Certainty, and of course many others, but this one has to be at the top for me. Absolutely love this album. People of the Lie is one of their big anthems, and it's definitely one of the big highlights on the album. Definitely one of my favorites. I definitely do enjoy the speed that you get on this album. Of course, the thrashiness, such as in songs like World Beyond. But the top track is also really good. Material World Paranoia, I think, is one of the band's best deep cuts. Definitely really dig that song a lot. And Millie, I think this album, it has some of his best vocal performances. But yeah, all around, definitely a really strong thrash metal album. And yeah, this would be their final album before they enter their more experimental period, starting with Renewal in 1992. But yeah, definitely one of the best metal albums in 1990, easily in my opinion. Honestly, it would maybe crack my top 5 personally. Again, if you haven't heard this, definitely check it out. Really good stuff. But let's go ahead and move on to maybe a contender for maybe being my favorite thrash metal album. I mean, this album really has no filler on it, and the album I am talking about is Rest in Peace by Megadeth. I know not everyone's big on Dave Mustaine's vocals, but I personally dig I dig his vocals. Definitely unique. There isn't really anyone that's really sounds like him, but I personally, again, do dig his vocals. But especially in songs like Holy Wars and Hangar 18 and Five Magics. I think Five Magics is one of their most underrated songs. Honestly, maybe one of my favorite Megadeth songs. I don't know about top 10, that might be pushing it a little bit, but maybe top 20 to be honest. Absolutely love Five Magics. Again, this album really has no filler, no weak songs on it. But you can maybe point to Dawn Patrol as a maybe weak song, but at the same time, it's just a short instrumental though. Based instrumental by, of course, David Ellefson. I do like Rest in Peace Polaris. I think that's easily one of their best album closers by a landslide. And of course, you do have Tornado of Souls, which has one of the band's best solos. Poison Was the Cure is also really good. I do enjoy Take No Prisoners. Hangar 18 is definitely a top, well, of course, same with Holy Wars. Both of those songs are definitely top 5 Megadeth songs for me. But Hangar 18, that's a contender for maybe being my favorite Megadeth song of all time, to be honest. I absolutely love Hangar 18. But yeah, Rest in Peace, definitely a thrash metal masterpiece and a thrash metal essential. But let's go ahead and move on back to some old school death metal with Obituary, Cause of Death, often considered their best, or at least one of their best. And to me, this album and World Demise kind of fight for being my favorite, but Cause of Death, definitely a really great album. So many death metal classics, so many Obituary classics like Infected, Chopped in Half, of course, Turned Inside Out. I definitely really enjoy the title track. That's probably one of my favorite Obituary songs. Find the Arise is one of the deeper cuts on the album that I personally enjoy. Body Bag's also really good. But honestly, you really can't go wrong with any of the songs in here. All around, really great album and definitely one of the best albums of 1990. Moving on, we'll be moving to one of the biggest metal bands of the 90s, and I'm sure many people will know what I'm talking about, and that band is, of course, Pantera. I mean, come on, Cowboys from Hell, definitely an iconic 90s metal album for good reason, and same with, of course, the next album, Vulgar Display of Power. But yeah, Cowboys from Hell, I mean, definitely a metal classic, so many great songs. I mean, you got the title track, of course, Psycho Holiday, and you also have Cemetery Gates, which I think has one of Phil Anselmo's best vocal performances ever. Domination is definitely a banger, especially the breakdown towards the end of the song. Shattered, I think, is definitely one of my favorite deep cuts on the album. Same with Heresy. Art of Shredding is also really great. Probably one of the best album closers, I'd say. But yeah, Cowboys from Hell definitely had to be on this list. Now we're moving to Prong with Beg to Differ. When it comes to the world of groove metal, this is definitely an essential, and the band in general really is an essential, again, if you like the more groovy side of metal, especially their album Cleansing. But this album would probably be my second favorite from them. So many great songs. I will admit, probably one of those albums where the first half is definitely the stronger half and the second half is the weaker half, but the second half does have its moments though. I do enjoy the second half, but the first half is just so strong, especially with the first 4 songs for Dear Life, Steady Decline, Beg to Differ, and Lost and Found. But Take It in Hand is another highlight for me on the album. Prime Cut's also solid, but yeah, all around, definitely one of Prong's best. And now for the final album for this video, we'll be ending things off with one of the big 4, with Slayer, Seasons in the Abyss. Now, when it comes to picking a favorite Slayer album, you definitely get multiple answers. Some people point to Rain and Blood, or this album, or even Hell Awaits. I have seen some people say Hell Awaits, but for me, I have to go with Seasons in the Abyss. I mean, for me, this album really is their peak, but of course, you could make your argument for Rain and Blood too. I mean, that album is another classic for them, but I don't know. I personally really enjoy Seasons in the Abyss. I mean, the title track is definitely a top 5 Slayer song for me. Spirit in Black, probably top 15, top 20, or, well, honestly, maybe top 10 for me, Slayer song. I absolutely love Spirit in Black. War Ensemble, for me, one of their best singles. Expendable Youth is another favorite of mine on the album. Dead Skin Mask, another classic for them. I mean, so many great songs off this album. Again, definitely my favorite Slayer album. But yeah, those are my top 10 metal albums of 1990. Let me know your thoughts on my picks here. Let me know if some of these albums are some of your favorites and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like. Subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.